Tensions due to economic unrest within Iran continue to simmer. While diplomatic talks between the U.S. and Iran are set to resume this week, are more U.S. military strikes imminent? And will the people of Iran rise up and demand regime change? With analysis, I'm joined by Middle East policy analyst Dr. Walid Phares and human rights advocate Gazelle Sharmahd. Thank you both for being here. And you are both co-hosts of the War and Freedom podcast. Thanks so much. These diplomatic talks are set to resume this week with Steve Witkoff in Oman. Talks the Trump administration say are meant to establish guardrails with Iran. But given Iran's track record, Walid, the recent attacks on our forces, their nuclear acceleration, the continued arming of Hamas, Hezbollah, why should anyone believe these talks will produce anything?
Raymond, as you and I have discussed this forever, obviously my answer is the conclusion here is I do not trust this regime, the Islamic regime in Iran. What they're trying to do right now is basically to gain time, as much time as they can, because according to our intelligence, they believe the Iranian regime or the Islamic regime in Iran believe that something domestic is going to happen in the United States in the next few months so that the president and the cabinet will be very busy. So they are doing everything they can. First of all, they said we're ready to discuss everything, including the domestic issues. Now they're saying we're not. We're only discussing nuclear. And then now they're changing location from one country to another. It's the regular Khomeini's tactic, gaining time. You got it, Raymond.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think the goal of this talk is from the U.S. perspective? What do they really want to get out of this?
From the U.S. perspective, basically from the president's perspective, is that the regime will start accepting all these conditions. I mean, with regard to nuclear, there is no nuclear. I just messaged this on Twitter. There is no nuclear anymore before the next 5 years. But let's assume they want to cancel the capability of Tehran in terms of long-range missiles. That's the ICBM. Mm-hmm. They want to see that regime stopping funding of the various militias in the region, but no words on behalf of the regime regarding the domestic situation. They are ready to pay time and everything, but they cannot accept a connection between the free world and the people of Iran because that would bring their end.
Gazelle, you have said repeatedly that the Iranian people are ready for regime change. We've seen the protests, we've seen the fires, the women refusing to wear the hijabs, the strikes. Will the U.S. attempt to negotiate with the regime over the heads of the Iranian people? And what do ordinary Iranians think of these attempts at diplomacy?
Thank you, Raymond, for having me here. Let me first clarify the stance of the Iranian people. The Iranian people don't see this regime as their regime. They see it as a foreign occupation. That's why they're not talking about regime change. They're talking about liberation. This is comparable historically with France under Nazi occupation. The French under Nazi occupation were not seeing the German Nazis as their own government, the Vichy government or anything. So we had to understand that the Hitler regime was an expansionist, genocidal regime expanding all over Europe and becoming a threat to us. That's how the Iranian people see this regime. So they will never accept this regime. And even if there is anybody out there that wants to negotiate with this crumbling regime, the Iranian people will not allow that. Right now in Iran, there's martial law. That means this regime has no political standing. It cannot even survive without having tanks in the cities. So what are we negotiating with if the Iranian people are dead certain that they will take this regime out?
Mm-hmm. Walid, the president's drawn what he calls a red line. No more attacks on U.S. forces, no acceleration toward nuclear weapons. We've already been seeing limited strikes in response to Iran's provocations. Is this administration prepared to follow through with sustained military action if Iran keeps crossing the line here?
Raymond, I'm not concerned about the military capabilities of the United States. I mean, let's all remember that a few months ago, President Trump ordered the destruction of the sites, of the nuclear sites, in 3 hours. People have been talking about it since the Obama administration. We had so many conversations. He ended it in 3 hours. There is no nuclear power in Iran to negotiate about. What there is there in Iran is a machine, a killing machine by the Khomeini regime that has killed over 30,000 people. So the only negotiations I can imagine is to find a way, a diplomatic way of transfer of power from this regime, which is like the Third Reich, outside and negotiate with an interim government that would be led by the opposition inside and outside the country to replace him. I mean, that logic is so different from what the negotiators are trying to get to, or some of the Arab countries, including Qatar, are trying to convince us that this is the way, that the regime will only make few concessions and everything will go back to what it was. No, that's 30,000 people killed away.
Gazelle, your own father was a hostage to this regime. He loved freedom. He spoke out. He paid the ultimate price. Tell me about Jimmy Sharmahd, your father. And when you hear U.S. officials talk about diplomatic engagement, what goes through your mind?
Let me tell you real quick in a summary of who my father was. My father was born in Iran, raised in Germany, and then we're living in America for the last 20 years here as Americans. So from here, as a software engineer, he created a website for the people of Iran 20 years ago, before we had, a phone with Twitter and everything on it and social media, where people in Iran could log in. Their IP addresses were protected. He was giving them VPNs before we even know what VPNs were. So giving them a tool to mobilize and take this regime down. How threatening is that to the Ayatollah regime? So threatening that in 2009, they sent assassins to Los Angeles, to our door where we live, to murder my father. And this was thankfully foiled by the FBI back then. But they didn't stop. So their terror continued until they were able to kidnap my father on a flight overlay in Dubai, drag him through 2 state borders to Iran, and hold him hostage for the last 5 years under the Biden administration, which did nothing to save their hostage. They didn't talk about him. To the contrary, they paid $1.2 billion per hostage to bring other hostages out and left him behind to be killed and murdered.
Awful. Just awful. I'm so sorry. Walid, let's talk about the Christians and other religious minorities in Iran. We don't hear much about them in the mainstream press, but they're among the most persecuted communities in the world under this regime. How does the persecution of Christians fit into Iran's broader strategy of control? And what should the U.S. be doing to support these communities?
Well, Raymond, the regime has been persecuting all ethnicities, all groups in Iran. The minorities have suffered significantly. The regime has been oppressing the entire population, but the Christians have been singled out, have been persecuted, especially in the 90s. I remember where the head of the evangelical community was executed, persecuted, and of course, every other Middle Eastern Christians, should they be Assyrian, Armenian, and others, although the regime has been claiming, oh, we are protecting them. I remember the regime and Assad, both of them have been claiming that, oh, we are protecting them. No, those minorities have barely the rights that a caliphate would give, like 1,400 years ago. But let's be very clear. For the Christians of Iran to feel safer, freer, the Iranian people as a whole will have to be free. Why? Because the Christians in Iran are not located in one place, like the Kurds or other places. They are dispersed across the nation, and their fate is linked to the fate of civil society in Iran.
Yeah. Gazelle, you've been in contact with dissidents inside Iran. People are risking everything during these uprisings. How many people has the regime actually done away with? And what are people telling you right now? Is there enough ground support, if you will, to overthrow this regime? And do they even have that in the sights at this moment?
A lot of questions. I think the most important was the last one that you asked, is there enough ground support? So let me translate real quick what this regime or the Iranian people saw in the last 50 years. Imagine for 1 second the most anti-American politician that you can think of, be it like the mayor of New York right now, Ilhan Omar or Rashid, whoever you think by policy is anti-American and a threat to what we stand for. On paper, they might be American, they might have an American passport, they might speak English. But imagine these kinds of people coming with an army of turbaned Arab Islamists to DC, taking over the White House, seizing power, then starting to lynch members of the House and the Senate, exile our president, exile our Secretary of State, then come and burn our American flag and replace it with an ISIS flag. Then come and replace our national anthem with chants for Islamic prayer. And then come and rip up our constitution and replace it by Sharia law, just to impose on the people of America Sharia law and lynch them for the next 50 years. What do you think the people of America would think about that? Do you think we will sit down and say, well, this is now a new government? Or do you think the people of America will rise up year after year, whatever the cost is, to say this is an occupation, this is not America, and we want these people out? That's what's happening in Iran for the last 50 years. So from the moment the Ayatollahs were flown into Iran, the Iranian people saw them as a threat and as an occupation, and have been rising again and again and again at great personal cost. As you said, 30,000 people were massacred within days, and they're continuing to do that. They have not stopped yet. So if you're willing to give life and limb to get your country back, what else can stop you? These people, we just saw new footage from Iran after this massacre. Schoolgirls are sitting in the school, massive chants, and saying, students, we as students will be killed, will die, but we will not sit down. That's the base ground, or what you're calling the forces on the ground that we have there. Millions of Iranians are ready to go.
Walid, I'll leave with this. That groundswell that we're seeing now, is it sufficient to topple this regime? And if you were in the Situation Room right now with the president, you would tell him what about this Iranian regime's intentions?
If I have my 10, 15 minutes with the president in the Situation Room or in the White House in general, I would say, Mr. President, number one, you need to direct a speech, not just a tweet. The tweet was fantastic, the first one, the second, and all of these tweets. A long speech to the Iranian people. That is the equivalent of a huge military force, because he would mobilize, as Giselle said, millions and millions of Iranians, and we may need less actually actions if Iranians believe that the United States is coming. Number two, making sure that we will tell our allies, look, on this one, thank you, Gulf, thank you, Turkey, thank you, everybody, but that's a situation that we Americans are going to be dealing with the Iranian people, our allies. And you know why? The president will understand that, because he understands the capabilities and the resources of this magnificent, huge nation of 90 million people. They have a coast much longer than any other coast of the Persian Gulf. They have all the gas that anybody in the world will dream of. So we are very close from creating a massive change in the region and in the world if the president is convinced.
Well, we'll keep our eyes on it. We'll call upon you all again. Walid, Gazelle, thank you both for being here. Catch the War and Freedom podcast at War Freedom on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.